Baked beans are one of those beautiful hearty things you have for breakfast, but this one can be something that you can have any time of the day. So we're gonna really make it quite savory. We're adding maple syrup, Worcestershire sauce, and I'm also gonna throw in some pasta to lengthen it out a little bit, so it is something you can have for lunch if you wanted to, or even for dinner if you wanted to throw in some sausages or something like that. So a nice little base recipe that you can have throughout the day. As I said, this is a really, really basic recipe, and you can add to it if you want to. There are a few little secret ingredients in there that pump it up a little bit, but it's fairly simple. So onion, I'm gonna throw in first, and it's a cold pan. I don't wanna brown the onion, I wanna bring the sugar out of it, soften it. So then turn my pan on, a little bit of oil in there with that, just to help it along. So that was one diced onion. The more time you take in the beginning with this recipe, the better off your beans are going to be at the end. A couple of cloves of garlic, which have been finely diced. A leek, which I'll chop. If you've got really massive sort of older leeks, you probably wouldn't put this green part in, but this was a small young leek, so you can get away with putting that green bit in. The green bit tends to be a little bit bitter if it's old, but you can get away with it if it's young, like the one we had. So I want to sweat this down. It will halve in size. The onion and the leek will start to go translucent, and then we'll start to build the rest of our flavors on top of that. That's the look that we're after. Everything's nice and glossy. You can see the onion is starting to become translucent. And what you're doing is bringing the sugar out of the vegetable, starting to caramelize that sugar off and give it some sweetness. Anything with a base like this that normally has onion and garlic, if you can throw some leek in there, it adds a little bit more of a savory note to it as well. Now, in with that, bacon. Cook that off for 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna start to deglaze the pan and bring all those flavors that are on the bottom of the pan up with our liquids. Now I don't mind if we start to get some color on our bacon, on our leek, on our onion. So I can turn the heat up a little bit because I've brought all those sugars out. They're on the outside of all of our vegetable, and now I can caramelize them. So heat up. It's really important when you're going through this stage to leave it alone. So everyone has this tendency to want to stir the pan. Don't do it because you want it to catch. I'll find a bit here. You want these little brown bits here. So that's the caramelization, those sugars I was talking about that you bring out. You're caramelizing those sugars or browning those sugars, and that's where the flavor comes from. So you got to let it sit for a little bit and let that catch. Okay, so some good color in there now. I'm going to pop in some tomato paste, about a tablespoon of tomato paste, which I'm going to cook out. And now deglaze all of those yummy bits off the bottom of the pan. So maple syrup first, some sweetness, and surprisingly we'll give it a little bit of smokiness as well. Some Worcestershire sauce. Stir all that in. You can see all those yummy bits coming off the bottom of the pan. Oh, it smells so good. Then about a cup of whatever stock you want to use. I'm using chicken stock. You can use beef stock if you want, or vegetable stock. Cup of chicken stock. Stir all that in. And now my crushed tomatoes. So you can use crushed or chopped, depends on how, it's a really chunky sauce anyway. So if you want those chunks of tomato in there, you can go with the chopped. I'm going a mixture of both. So pop those in. And once the tomatoes go in, then I'm going to check for seasoning, because tomatoes, especially tin tomatoes, need salt. And so you can give that a mix in. At this point, it's just a really good tomato-based sauce, which you could use for anything. I know it's going to need salt, so I'll give it a good pinch of salt. I'm going to add some mustard powder, about 2 tablespoons. Keen's mustard powder. Again, this is one of those things that everyone should have in their cupboard. And once all this is stirred in, I'll taste it and check for seasoning. See if I need to add any more mustard powder, see if I need to add any more salt. And check now for our seasoning. Oh, that's good. I reckon that's spot on, to tell you the truth. I was gonna add a little bit more salt, but no, I reckon it's salty enough. Now we add things to it that turns it into a meal. So, cannellini beans, a tin of cannellini beans. And then I've got some orecchiette, which I just like the size and the shape of the orecchiette for this sort of bean mix that so these are referred to as little ears because they look like someone's ears. So we'll pop probably a couple of handfuls to a cup of the orecchiette in there. And I've pre-cooked this to al dente because it's gonna cook a little bit more in our sauce. I've got my griddle pan smoking hot, so I can put my toast on there. I'll get some bar marks on that, make it nice and crunchy, and we're ready to plate up. A couple of big spoons of our beans and pasta into a bowl. I love this bowl. Breakfast, the most important meal of the day. Then some feta, which will crumble over the top. Some freshness. If you had, I don't have, but I was just thinking about it. If you had like a lime close by or a lemon close by, you can squeeze a little bit of citrus on top, which would be quite nice. So I'll pick some parsley as well. Just the fresh stuff on top is quite nice. A sourdough, take out and cut. Place that there. And there you go, baked beans at home. The trick with this one, I reckon, is, as I said, take your time at the beginning, extract as much flavour as you possibly can out of those base things that you put in the pan, and you'll be rewarded at the end. So my version of smoky baked beans.